She stopped for a bike repair. He had no idea he was fixing the heart of a billionaire hiding from the world. It was a hot afternoon, and the sun was burning above the small, sleepy town. The streets were almost empty, with just a few bicycles passing by slowly. In the corner of the town, there was a small garage. It looked old and worn out with faded paint and a wooden sign that said Armand Bike Repair. Inside the garage, a young man with oil on his hands and sweat on his forehead worked carefully on a child's broken bicycle. His name was Armand. Armand was in his late 20s. He had short, messy black hair, deep brown eyes, and a face that always looked calm, even when he was tired. His clothes were simple old jeans and a gray t-shirt with grease stains on it. But there was something special about him. He had soft eyes that made people feel comfortable, and his hands worked like magic on any bike. Everyone in town knew that Armand never said no to anyone. Whether it was a rich customer or a poor child, he fixed every bike with the same honesty and care that day. He was busy finishing his work when he heard the sound of tires dragging on the road. He looked up and saw a woman walking toward his garage, holding a very expensive touring bicycle. She was tall, wearing a cap and sunglasses. Her clothes looked dusty, like she had been traveling, but her shoes were clean and stylish, clearly expensive. The bike was sleek and modern, something Armand had only seen in magazines. One of the tires was flat, and the chain was loose. The woman stopped in front of his garage and smiled politely. "Hi, is this a repair shop?" "Ain't," she asked in a soft voice. Armand nodded and wiped his hands on a cloth. "Yes, bring it in. I'll take a look." She rolled the bike inside, and Armand noticed how carefully she handled it, almost like it was precious. He also noticed her hands. They were clean, soft, without a single scratch or mark. Definitely not someone used to rough travel. Still, he said nothing and focused on the bike. "What happened?" he asked. "I think the tire just went flat." "And something feels wrong with the chain too," she replied. Armand crouched down and began examining the bike. As he worked, he offered her a bottle of cold water. She looked surprised but took it with a smile. "Thank you," she said. "No problem," Armand replied, already fixing the tire. He worked in silence for a few minutes. The woman looked around the small garage. It had old posters on the walls, a dusty fan, a small toolbox, and a wooden bench. Everything was simple, but clean. She noticed a photograph hanging near the counter. It showed Armand as a child, standing beside an older man with a wide smile. His father? "Perhaps you run this place alone?" she asked. "Yeah," Armand answered without looking up. "It was my father's garage. After he passed away, I took over." "I'm sorry," she said gently. Armand nodded slightly, but didn't say anything more. He never liked talking much about his past. Instead, he tightened the chain, filled the tire with air, and made sure the brakes were working fine. In less than 15 minutes, the bike was ready. He stood up, wiped his hands again, and said, "It's done." The woman looked surprised. "That fast?" Armand smiled. It wasn't anything big. She reached into her small shoulder bag to pay him, but Armand shook his head. "It's okay. It was just a flat tire." No, I insist," she said. "I don't take money for small things," he replied with a quiet laugh. "Especially not from someone who looks like they've had a long ride." She looked at him for a moment, almost confused. Most people she met always tried to get something from her: money, contacts, help. But this man didn't even ask her name. He just helped. "Thank you," she said softly. "I'm Ayla, by the way." "Armand," he replied simply. She smiled and gave a small nod. "Well, thank you again, Armand. You saved my day. No problem." "Ride safe," he said, and turned back to his work. As she left, Armand watched her for a second. She rode slowly, carefully, like someone who wasn't used to bikes. Her clothes didn't match her bike, and her behavior didn't match her appearance. Something felt off. She looked like a traveler, but her eyes and her manner were different. Still, Armand wasn't the type to judge. He had seen many types of people walk into his garage. After she disappeared from view, he went back to fixing the child's bicycle. But somewhere in the back of his mind, he kept thinking about her. There was something about her quiet voice and the way she looked around his garage not with judgment, but with curiosity, like she was seeing a different world for the first time. That night, as he locked the garage and walked home, he told himself it was nothing, just another customer. But even as he ate dinner with his younger sister and mother, the image of the stranger with the expensive bike and the soft hands stayed with him. He didn't know her last name or where she was from, or why someone like her was walking alone with a flat tire in a small town like his. And he definitely didn't know that. She was far more than what she had appeared. He couldn't have guessed that she was actually Ayla Rahman, the daughter of billionaire tech mogul Hassan Rahman, a woman who had left behind luxury, wealth, and her privileged world to search for something simple, something real. Ayla on the other hand, was equally surprised by the encounter. Dash. As she rode through the quiet streets, she thought about Armand's calm behavior. He hadn't tried to impress her, hadn't asked her questions, hadn't tried to guess who she was. He had treated her like a normal person. That was exactly what she had been longing for. For years, Ayla had felt trapped in a golden cage. Born into one of the richest families in the country, she had grown up surrounded by servants, cameras, and people who always wanted something from her. She had never known if anyone truly cared about her or just her money and name. That's why she had decided to leave the city for a few weeks alone. No bodyguards, no luxury cars, just her and her bike. She had planned to stay in small towns, meet ordinary people, and figure out who she really was without her family name. She never expected to meet someone like Armand on her first day. His gentle nature, the way he offered her water before even touching the bike, and his refusal to take money, all of it made her heart feel a little lighter. When she reached her guest house, she took out a small notebook from her bag and wrote, "Armand, bike mechanic." Honest eyes, calm hands, didn't care who I was, just helped. She didn't know if she would see him again, but she wanted to. Back in the small house behind the garage, Armand sat outside on a plastic chair, sipping tea under the stars. His mother had gone to sleep, and his sister was reading a book inside. The street was quiet. He looked up at the sky and sighed. Life was tough, but moments like today made it feel a little less heavy. He had no idea that the quiet woman he helped would soon turn his world upside down. It's not because of her money or fame, but because of the way she would make him feel seen, heard, and valued. And because in a world full of noise, they both had found a moment of peace in a dusty garage. With a broken bike and a gentle smile, the story had just begun. Neither of them knew how deeply their lives were about to change. But in that one simple act of kindness, something beautiful had quietly taken root. 2 days had passed since Ayla had visited Armand's small bike garage, but she hadn't stopped thinking about him even for a moment. She had met hundreds of people in her life at parties, conferences, and interviews, but no one had treated her the way he did. No questions, no judgment, no interest in who she was or what she owned. He had looked at her with kind eyes, fixed her bike, and simply wished her a good ride. That kind of behavior was rare in her world. That morning, Ayla stood outside the small guest house where she was staying. Her bike leaned against the wall, completely fine, but she found herself looking for an excuse to return to that dusty little garage again. She smiled at her own thoughts. Was she really trying to invent a reason just to see a mechanic? After a few minutes of thinking, she adjusted the gears on her bike slightly to make them click when pedaled. It wasn't a serious issue, just enough to pretend something was wrong. She put on a cap, tied her hair back, and rode slowly toward Armand's shop. It was late morning when Armand heard the sound of a familiar bicycle stopping outside. He turned and saw Ayla getting off the bike. She looked different today, less dusty, more relaxed, and her eyes had a hint of mischief in them. Armand was surprised to see her again, but he didn't show it. "You again?" he asked with a small smile. "I think my gears are acting up," Ayla replied, pretending to frown. Armand nodded and walked toward the bike. "Let's take a look." She followed him inside and stood quietly as he placed the bike on the repair stand. He began inspecting the gear system, his fingers moving gently over the chain and levers. It didn't take long for him to realize the issue wasn't serious. Still, he acted as if it was something to look into carefully. Somewhere inside, he didn't mind seeing her again either. So, he said as he worked, "How far did you travel after leaving here last time?" "Not far," she said, sitting on the wooden bench near the entrance. "I stayed in town." "It's peaceful. You're not from around here, are you?" he asked casually. She paused. "No, I'm just traveling alone?" She nodded. "Yes." Armand glanced at her for a moment, then returned to his work. "Most people don't travel alone, especially not women. It's not always safe." "I needed to get away," she said quietly. "I just wanted to be somewhere quiet, away from everything loud." He didn't ask what she was running from. He just nodded as if he understood, because in a way, he did. People often came into his shop carrying more than broken bikes. Some carried heartbreak, others pain, and some just needed a moment of kindness. Ayla seemed like someone who carried too much inside. "I like your garage," she said after a while. "It feels real." Armand smiled slightly. "It's all I have. It keeps me busy. Fixing things gives me peace." "Did you always want to be a mechanic?" she asked. He shook his head. "No. I wanted to study mechanical engineering. I got into college too, but life had other plans. My father fell sick, and someone had to take care of the family. So I left my studies, came back, and started working here full-time." He taught me everything. Ayla listened carefully. There was no sadness in his voice, only acceptance. She admired that. In her world, people often cried over not getting the latest phone or not being invited to a party. But here was a man who had given up his dreams quietly, without complaint. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "Sometimes," Armand said, tightening a bolt. "But I also feel proud when I fix something that someone else couldn't. I like the feeling of solving a problem with my hands. It's honest work." Allah looked at his hands. They were rough, strong, and had oil stains that wouldn't go away even after washing. They were the hands of someone who worked hard every day, who didn't need luxury to feel proud. "You speak like someone who's seen a lot," she said. Armand laughed softly. "Not much. Just enough to know what matters." She smiled. "And what matters? Kindness, peace, family, and being useful to someone." For a moment there was silence. Allah felt like she was hearing something she hadn't heard in years. It wasn't a rehearsed line or a clever joke, it was just the truth. A kind of truth she had been starving for. "I don't meet many people like you," she said quietly. "That's because you don't come to garages like this often," Armand replied with a grin. She laughed. "True." After a few more minutes, Armand stepped back and said, "It's done. Your gears are fine now. Should ride smooth." "Thank you," she said, standing up. "How much do I owe you?" He looked at her and raised an eyebrow. "Didn't. We already have this talk," she chuckled. "But this time, you did more work." "Still a small job," he replied. "Just remember to clean the gears sometimes. Dust builds up fast." She smiled, shook his hand, and turned to leave. But before walking out, she looked back and said, "Do you ever take a break? Do you ever stop working sometimes?" He said, "Why?" "Just wondering. Maybe you should take one sometime." He shrugged. "Maybe." Then she left again, riding off slowly down the street. Armand watched her go, then walked back into the garage. He looked at the bench where she had sat. It was strange how quickly someone could change the feeling of a place, even if they stayed for just a few minutes. Over the next few days, Allah came back again. Sometimes with small problems like loose brakes or a weird sound from the chain. Sometimes with no bike problem at all, just to say hello and sit on the bench while Armand worked. They began talking more. She told him little stories about her past jobs, carefully hiding her real background. She said she used to work for different companies, never staying long. Armand never asked too many questions. He wasn't the type to dig into people's lives. He told her about his sister who wanted to become a teacher, and how their mother still missed their father every evening. Allah listened, not just with ears, but with her heart. She liked the way he spoke, not fast, not slow, just real. Every word had meaning. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset from the steps outside the garage, Allah said, "You're lucky." "You know?" Armand looked at her, confused. "Lucky?"
Yes.
You have a peaceful life. You work with your hands. People respect you. Your family loves you. That's rare." He smiled. "Maybe. But some people would say, I'm poor. I didn't finish college, and I work in a garage all day." "I think you're richer than most people I know," she said. Armand didn't know what to say. For a moment their eyes met, and something passed between them, spoken, gentle, and full of warmth. But in the back of Isla's mind, a small fear began to grow. She was hiding a big part of herself. What if Armand found out? Would he feel betrayed? Would he think she was just playing a game? She didn't want to lie to him, but she was also scared of what the truth might do. That night, she sat in her guest house room and opened her journal again. Armand, more than a mechanic. Honest, brave, kind, makes me feel seen. I wish he knew who I really am, but I don't want to lose this. She closed the book and sighed. She hadn't expected to feel this way. She had just wanted to escape, to breathe. But now she was afraid of how much she cared about this man with tired eyes and strong hands. Armand, meanwhile, sat outside his home staring at the moon. His sister had teased him earlier. "Who's the girl with the fancy bike?" she asked. With a smile, "Just someone passing through," he replied. "Then why do you smile every time she comes around?" He didn't answer because deep down he wasn't sure either. All he knew was that the quiet visitor with kind eyes had become a part of his daily thoughts, and that her presence made everything feel a little lighter, a little better. But he also knew something else. She was hiding something. Not in a bad way, but like someone trying to protect herself. He didn't know what it was yet, but he hoped when the time came, he'd be strong enough to understand it. Neither of them knew what the next few days would bring. But something had already started between them. A silent friendship, a gentle trust, and maybe the beginning of something more. Isla's visits to the garage became more regular, and with each visit, something deeper started to build between her and Armand. What started as casual conversations soon turned into long talks about life. Dreams, fears, and memories. Armand found himself smiling more when she was around, and Ayla, for the first time in a long while, felt free from the weight of her billionaire name. Her business responsibilities and the constant expectations placed on her shoulders. Armand still didn't know who she really was. To him, she was just a curious traveler, a kind stranger who somehow understood his quiet world. He noticed the way she listened genuinely patiently and how she never acted like she was better than anyone else. She sat on the same dusty bench, drank tea from the same chipped cup, and laughed at his sister's silly jokes like they were lifelong friends. Simplicity of it all made it feel special. But not everyone in town saw it that way. Whispers began to spread among the local people. Shopkeepers noticed the elegant woman coming to the garage almost every day. Her clothes might have been casual, but her body language, her calm confidence gave her away. She didn't belong here, and people started to talk. The local tea seller, often sat across the street, once commented to another customer, "That woman's no traveler. Look at her shoes. Her watch. She's someone important." The gossip spread quickly. Some thought she was a journalist. Others guessed she was the daughter of a politician. A few thought she was running from someone or hiding something. But one person in particular didn't like her visits at all. Danish was the son of a wealthy shop owner in town. His family owned a large hardware store, and he always believed he was the most successful young man around. He had once tried to buy Armand's garage land, thinking he could turn it into a chain store. But Armand had politely refused. That had hurt Danish's pride. Now, seeing Armand laughing and spending time with a mysterious woman made Danish furious. He felt jealous, though he would never admit it. He started making comments in public, saying things like, "Looks like our mechanic has a rich fan now. Maybe she'll buy him a new garage soon." People laughed nervously, but some agreed silently with his thoughts. Armand, however, didn't care much for town gossip. He was too focused on work and too honest to get involved in drama. But his younger sister Hira noticed the change. One day she asked him, "Bye, do you like her?" Armand paused, looking up from the tire he was fixing. "She's nice," he said. She's more than nice. You talk about her even when she's not here, Hira teased. He gave a small smile. She listens. That's rare. Hira nodded. Just be careful. People are starting to talk. I know, Armand said softly, but I don't care what they say. A few days later, something happened that changed everything. Alla was sitting in the garage, watching Armand work on a mountain. Bike Hira was nearby, organizing tools. Isla's phone, which she usually kept hidden in her bag, slipped out and fell onto the floor. Hira, who bent down to pick it up, saw a flash on the screen, a message notification from an email address that read, Reminder. Board approval needed by CEO Ms. Ayla Rahman. Hira froze. The name Ayla Rahman sounded familiar, very familiar. Ayla quickly took the phone, trying to stay calm, but she saw the look on Hira's face. There was no going back now. That evening after Ayla left, Hira sat with Armand and showed him what she had seen. I think she's hiding something big. She said she's not who she says she is. Armand frowned. You sure? I saw it with my own eyes. Bye. Her full name is Ayla Rahman. Doesn't that sound familiar to you? Isn't she the daughter of that big tech billionaire? Armand was silent. He had heard the name before. It had come up in the news many times. Ayla Rahman, the only daughter of Hassan Rahman, CEO of Rahman, the biggest software company in the country. He didn't sleep well that night. The next day, when Ayla came to visit, she immediately sensed the change in Armand's eyes. He wasn't cold, but he wasn't as open either. After some hesitation, he finally asked, Who are you really, Ayla? She froze. Her hands gripped the edge of the bench, her heart pounded in her chest. I was going to tell you, Armand, she said softly. Then tell me now. She looked into his eyes and took a deep breath. My name is Ayla Rahman. My father is the CEO of Rahman Tech. Yes, we're very wealthy, but I'm not here because of that. I came to escape that life for a while, to be normal, to breathe. I didn't lie to hurt you. I just didn't want to be treated like a billionaire's daughter. Armand said nothing for a long time. The garage was quiet, except for the ticking of a wall clock. You should have told me, he finally said. No, she whispered. But I was scared. Scared that if you knew the truth, you'd treat me differently. I wouldn't, he said. But now, it feels like I was part of some experiment. It wasn't an experiment, she said quickly. The first real person I've met in a long time, he looked at me like a human being, not like a trophy or a wallet. Armand looked away. But everything we shared, was it real? Yes, she said, her voice trembling. It was the most real thing I've felt in years. But Armand needed time. He didn't push her away, but he also didn't ask her to stay. Ayla left that day with tears in her eyes, not knowing if she'd ever return. Unfortunately, the secret didn't stay hidden. One of the local boys who had seen Ayla at the garage had taken a picture of her from behind. He uploaded it online, and within days, a news report went viral. Billionaire heiress Ayla Rahman spotted at small-town garage. Is she in love with a mechanic? Photos were everywhere. Journalists started arriving in town. Porters stood outside Armand's garage asking questions. Cameras flashed, strangers called out his name, and rumors spread like wildfire. Some people found it exciting and cheered him on, others mocked him, saying he was after her money. His regular customers stopped coming. They didn't want to be seen on camera. His peaceful garage had turned into a battlefield of noise and attention. Armand, who had lived a quiet life all these years, was deeply disturbed. Stopped opening the garage for a few days, ignored calls, kept his phone switched off, and avoided the market. His mother and sister tried to comfort him, but he felt betrayed not just by Ayla, but by the whole world that refused to leave him alone. Ayla saw the chaos too. She had gone back to the city, forced by her father to return. After the news broke, she wasn't angry, she was heartbroken. She had only wanted something simple, something real. But the world had taken it and turned it into a spectacle. She gave no interviews. She turned down TV shows and magazines that begged for the love story of the year. In her heart, there was only silence. Armand, on the other hand, sat in his garage one evening, surrounded by silence too. He looked at the bench where Ayla used to sit. He missed her laugh, her questions, her presence. But more than that, he missed how she had made him feel, seen, respected, heard. He thought back to everything she had said. Her eyes had told the truth, even if her words had waited too long. In that moment, he realized something. She had come to him with a broken bike, but maybe she was the one who had needed fixing. Maybe she hadn't come to lie, but to leave a life without status, without money, without fear. He couldn't erase what had happened, but he could decide what came next. The town moved on, but Armin's heart still carried her name and Ayla. Back in her world of glass buildings and expensive meetings, still looked at the photo of that dusty garage on her phone and whispered, "I'm sorry." They were apart now, caught in a storm they never wanted, but the story wasn't over yet. It had only reached the part where everything falls apart. So that may be. Someday something stronger could rise from the pieces. The sun rose slowly over the small town, but Armand's world still felt heavy and dark. Days had passed since the truth about Ayla had come out. Her name, her identity, her wealth, everything was now public. The quiet, peaceful life he had built inside his small garage had been shattered. What was once a hidden corner of comfort had turned into a spotlight for gossip, cameras, and curious strangers. He had never wanted fame. He'd only wanted to fix bikes, earn an honest living, and keep his family safe and content. But now, that peace was gone. Outside his garage, reporters waited with mics and flashing cameras. Some called his name. Others shouted questions. "Armand, are you in love with Ala Rahman? Is it true she promised you a luxury car? Will you move? To the city now?" He never answered. He simply locked the garage door and walked away, his head down, his heart confused. Inside, his mother watched everything silently from the window, her face tight with worry. Hira, his sister, tried to cheer him up by making jokes and bringing him tea, but even she couldn't ignore how badly the media attention had affected their lives. Neighbors stopped coming over. Some customers even canceled their repair requests. People started avoiding the garage not because they hated Armand, but because they were scared of being dragged into the mess. In a small town, even a little, noise becomes a storm. Armand felt like he had lost everything. He didn't blame Ayla completely. Somewhere deep inside, he knew she hadn't meant to bring this chaos. But he couldn't deny the pain. She had kept the truth from him, and now, without intending to, she had turned his life upside down. Every evening, he sat outside looking at the stars like he used to, but now the silence was heavier. The sky felt farther away. He missed her voice, her laughter, her questions. He missed the way she looked at him without judgment, the way she made him feel less alone back in the city. Ala's life was not easy either. She was no longer the invisible traveler who could go anywhere without being noticed. The moment the media had revealed her location, her father's team had rushed to take her back. Her father, Hassan Rahman, was furious not because she had lied or disappeared, but because her actions had caused a public scandal. His daughter was seen sitting in a dusty garage talking to a mechanic. The news was everywhere. Investors were worried. Business partners started asking questions. The company's name was now mixed with rumors and stories about love, lies, and class difference. But Ayla didn't care about the business. She cared about Armand. She tried calling him. No answer. She sent messages. No reply. She wrote him a long email explaining everything, why she had hidden the truth, how scared she had been to lose something so pure, and how deeply sorry she was. But the message remained unread. She sat by her bedroom window, holding the cup of tea her maid had brought, and stared out at the tall city buildings. It all felt empty. Her room was filled with expensive furniture, soft carpets, and everything money could buy, but none of it felt like home. Her heart ached for the wooden bench in Armin's garage, the smell of oil and grease, the sound of tools clicking on metal. She longed for that dusty peace she had once taken for granted. The media wouldn't leave her alone either. Cameras followed her every time she stepped out. Journalists wanted interviews. TV shows offered her money to talk about the romance with the mechanic. She refused them all. She didn't want to turn their story into entertainment. It had been real to her. It was real. But now the silence from Armand made her wonder if it had meant the same to him. One night, Hala finally made a decision. She walked into her father's office and said, "I'm taking time off. I need to go back." Father looked up from his laptop. "Back to that town?" "Yes," she said firmly. "There are things I need to fix, things that matter more than business." Her father didn't understand, but he didn't stop her either. Maybe somewhere inside, even he realized that not everything in life could be controlled by power and money. Meanwhile, Armand continued to stay quiet. He'd opened the garage again, but only for a few hours a day. Stopped talking to strangers. He avoided eye contact. He worked like a robot fixing bikes, returning them, then locking up early. Even the children who used to run into the garage felt his sadness. One afternoon, a boy named Imran, about 10 years old, came in with a flat tire. Armand fixed it silently. As the boy was about to leave, he said, "Bye. When will the pretty lady come back?" Armand looked up surprised. "What lady?" "The one who used to sit on the bench and drink tea with you?" "She always smiled at me," the boy said. Armand forced a small smile. "She's not coming back." The boy shrugged. "You smiled more when she was here." Then he pedaled away. Those words stayed in Armand's heart. He went home that night and opened his inbox. Isla's message was still there in red. His hand hovered over the mouse. Finally, he clicked. The message was long but simple. It was honest. She had written about her fear of losing him, how the world had always judged her for her money, how meeting him made her feel human again. She ended with a sentence that hit him straight in the chest. "If I could choose to be anyone, I'd choose to be the girl who sat on that bench beside you every single day." He read it 3 times. The next morning, something strange happened. There was no noise outside, no cameras, no reporters, just calm. Armand opened the garage door, expecting another quiet day. But on the workbench, he saw a sealed envelope. There was no name, no stamp. Just a note inside that read, "Meet me on the old rooftop cafe at sunset, if you still remember me." There was only one person who could have written that. Armand felt his heartbeat rise. Part of him still carried anger, but another part, bigger and stronger, carried something else. Hope. At sunset, walked up the old stairs of the rooftop cafe, a place that had been closed for years. It was quiet, with a view of the town. Stretching out below, the sky was painted in soft orange and pink. And there, standing by the edge, was Isla. She turned when she heard his footsteps. Their eyes met after so many days, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. "I didn't think you'd come," she whispered. "I almost didn't." He replied, "I'm sorry," she said, stepping closer. "I never meant for any of this to happen." "I know," he said softly. "It came to escape noise, and I became part of it." "No, Armand. You were the only silence I found in a world full of noise. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I was just scared of losing what we had." He looked at her, really looked past the expensive clothes, past the city name, past the billionaire's daughter. He saw the same girl who had walked into his garage with a flat tire and a soft smile. "I missed you," he finally said her. Eyes filled with tears. So did I. They stood there for a while, letting the breeze wrap around them like an old memory. She didn't ask for forgiveness again, and he didn't ask any more questions. Sometimes just showing up was enough. "Do you think we can start over?" she asked. He smiled. "Not from the beginning, but maybe from here." She reached into her bag and took out 2 cups of tea, just like they used to share in the garage. He laughed quietly and took one. They sat down on the edge, side by side. Their shoulders brushing. The world might still watch them. People might still talk. But in that moment, it didn't matter, because they weren't just the mechanic and the billionaire anymore. They were 2 people who had found something real in a world full of lies, and somehow, against all odds, they had found their way back to it. The sky had turned golden as the sun began to set, painting the town in soft shades of orange and pink. On the rooftop of an old cafe, Armand and Ala sat together, sipping tea in silence. No media, no noise, no judgment. For a while, everything. Around them felt still, like the world had paused just so they could catch their breath. Alla looked over at Armand. His face was calm, but his eyes held emotions she couldn't fully read: regret, hope, and something else that made her heart ache gently. She wanted to reach out, to say something deep, something perfect, but all she managed to whisper was, "Thank you for coming." Armand smiled faintly and nodded. "I wanted to understand everything before deciding what to feel." Alla nodded. "You have every right." They sat in silence again, but this time it was not awkward. It was healing. Both of them were thinking about the journey that had brought them to this moment. From a flat tire on a hot afternoon to a rooftop. Meeting after weeks of chaos, pain, and confusion, everything had changed, yet something had stayed the same. "I wrote you letters," Alla said suddenly, "but I never sent them." Armand turned to look at her. "I didn't want to bother you," she continued. "After what happened, I thought maybe you needed space, but I still wrote every night. Like I was talking to you." Small smile. "I thought about you every day. Even when I was angry. Even when the cameras showed up and people laughed at me." "I'm sorry, Armand," she said again, her voice soft but strong. "I never thought things would go that far." "I know," he said, setting his cup down. "Wasn't your fault that people are hungry for drama. You didn't create the mess. But it hurt. I understand," she whispered. For a few moments, they both looked out over the town. Below them, the streets were quiet. A few people walking home, lights flickering on in windows. It all looked so normal so far. From the noise of the media storm that had once surrounded them, Armand finally spoke again. "Do you ever wish you weren't?" Alla laughed a little, not because it was funny, but because she had asked herself that very question so many times. "Almost every day," she said. "I love my father, and I'm proud of the company. But sometimes I wish I could just be a girl who likes bicycles and drinks chai on a wooden bench." "You are," Armand said simply. "At least, you were to me." Alla looked at him, and her eyes filled with tears. You were the first person who saw me like that. Not as a billionaire's daughter, not as a CEO, just me." He nodded. "And that's the version of you I liked the most." The silence between them now felt warm, like a blanket after a long, cold night. Alla turned her body slightly toward him and said, "So what happens now?" Armand didn't answer immediately. He looked at her, studied her face. Then he asked, "What do you want to happen?" "I want to be part of your life," she said, without hesitation. "Not in headlines, not in secrets, just honestly. I don't want to pretend to be someone else, and I don't expect you to become someone else either." Armand's heart beat a little faster. There was something about her honesty that always made him feel seen. No filters, no show, just raw truth. And he appreciated that more than she would ever know. "But our worlds are very different, Alla," he said gently. "You belong to a world of cameras, decisions, meetings, high-rise, buildings. I fix bikes in a small garage. I earn just enough to take care of my family. What if someday you regret choosing this life?" "I won't," she said firmly. "Because peace doesn't come from money. I've had all the money in the world, but I never felt the peace I felt in your garage." Armand took a deep breath. She wasn't lying. She meant every word. Still, he was afraid that someday the world would pull her away again, that the noise would return, that this beautiful, quiet moment wouldn't last. "I'm not asking you to leave your world," he said carefully, "but I can't leave mine either." "I don't want you to," she said. "I just want to be part of it on your terms. If you open the garage at 9, I'll be there at 9. If you close at 6, I'll help you sweep the floor. If you want silence, I'll sit beside you without speaking. Just let me be near you." He stared at her, and his heart softened. She wasn't making promises she couldn't keep. She wasn't offering luxury or comfort. He was offering presence, loyalty, and truth. Slowly, he reached out and took her hand. "Then stay." Her eyes sparkled with relief and joy. "Really?" He nodded, but no more secrets. If your phone says CEO Ala Rahman, you don't hide it. If someone asks who you are, you tell them, because I don't want to love a mask. You won't, she said, squeezing his hand. They stayed like that until the stars came out. In the weeks that followed, life slowly returned to normal, but in a new way. Ala stayed in town longer. She started helping Armand in the garage, learning small repairs, organizing tools, and even painting one of the walls with a fresh color. The locals, after the initial shock, began to accept her. Some still whispered, but most saw how genuine she was, how she treated them kindly, remembered their names, and never acted superior. The media lost interest eventually. There were newer, shinier stories to chase, and Ala refused to give interviews. She didn't want to sell the story. She just wanted to live it. Armand's business improved again. People returned and new customers came too, curious about the humble man who had made a billionaire fall in love. But Armand stayed the same, quiet, hardworking, and focused. Refused expensive offers to upgrade the garage. He kept it the way it was, because it reminded him of who he was and where he came from. One morning, Illa surprised Armand by bringing him a brand new set of tools. They weren't flashy, just good quality ones he had once admired in a catalog but couldn't afford. No cameras. No strings, she said. Just a gift from someone who loves watching you work. Armand smiled and accepted them. Learning, he teased. She laughed. Slowly, but yes. As months passed, their bond grew stronger. Ala continued to travel sometimes for work, but she always returned to the garage, to the town. To Armand, they didn't rush into big decisions. There was no announcement of a wedding, no sudden move to the city. Just a quiet, steady love that felt stronger than anything loud and shiny. One day, while sitting on the same old bench, Ayla looked at Armand and said, "Do you know what I realized?" "What?" he asked. "You didn't just fix my bike." She said, "You fixed a part of me that I didn't even know was broken." He looked at her for a long moment, then said, "You fixed something in me too." And just like that, the journey that had started with a flat tire had become a story neither of them could have written. But both were proud to live. In a world where people often chase the wrong things, two souls had found something rare: honesty, peace, and love, not in wealth or status, but in the quiet corners of an ordinary life. And sometimes, that's where the most extraordinary stories begin.